Welcome back to the British Accent Podcast. Today's topic is something every English learner has thought at least once. Why does learning English feel so hard? Maybe you've been studying for months, or even years, and yet you still feel like you're not fluent, you still make mistakes, or sometimes you even feel like you're stuck. And that can be really frustrating.
Yes, and the interesting thing is, you're not alone. Every learner goes through this. Even the most confident speakers have moments when English feels difficult. The question isn't really if it feels hard, but why it feels that way and what you can do to make it easier, lighter, and maybe even fun again.
Exactly. And in this episode, we're going to dig deep into those reasons. We'll talk about things like why English feels complicated, why progress feels slow, why motivation sometimes disappears, and then we'll look at how to actually make the journey smoother.
Because the truth is, learning English doesn't have to feel like carrying a heavy weight every single day. There are ways to make it feel lighter, to enjoy the process, and to still improve without burning out.
Right, and we want you to feel encouraged. If you've ever said to yourself, maybe I'm not smart enough, or maybe English is just too hard for me, this episode is for you.
Let's start with the first big reason why learning English often feels so hard. It's everywhere.
So, Nick, you just mentioned one of the biggest reasons English feels so hard. It's everywhere. What do you mean by that?
Well, think about it. English is not just one version. There's British English, American English, Australian English, Canadian English, and then there are regional accents within those countries. Each one sounds slightly different, sometimes even very different. A learner studies one accent in school, then hears another on YouTube, then maybe listens to a podcast in yet another accent. That can feel overwhelming.
Yes, I completely agree. I've heard so many learners say, I understand my teacher, but when I listen to native speakers in movies or interviews, I feel lost. That's normal. Imagine being told there's one English, but then realizing there are actually hundreds of varieties. Of course it feels hard.
And here's the tricky part, this variety is not a bad thing. It's actually what makes English rich and useful worldwide. But as a learner, the first reaction is usually confusion, maybe even frustration. You might ask yourself, which English should I learn?
That's a great question. And I think the answer is, you don't have to pick only one. Focus first on clarity and understanding. Later, as you grow, you'll naturally adjust to different styles. The key is not to panic when you hear something new. It's not that you're bad at English. It's just that English itself is diverse.
Exactly. And that brings us to the second reason why learning English feels hard. It takes time, and progress often feels invisible.
Oh yes, this one is so important. Many learners tell me, I've studied for 6 months and I don't feel fluent yet. But the truth is, language is not like memorizing facts for an exam. It's more like training your body at the gym. At first, you don't notice the muscles growing. But little by little, the strength builds up.
Yes. And because you use English every day in small ways, listening, speaking, reading, writing, you sometimes don't see how far you've come. It's like watching your hair grow. You can't notice it day by day, but when you look back at old photos, you realize the difference.
That's such a perfect comparison. So, what makes it easier? One thing I always suggest is tracking your progress. For example, record yourself speaking today. Then, record yourself again in 3 months. You'll be surprised at how much more natural you sound.
Great tip. And also, set small goals instead of only one giant goal like fluency. If you only aim for fluency, you'll always feel far away. But if your goal is, this week, I will learn 10 new words and use them in a conversation, then you'll feel progress. And those small wins build motivation.
Absolutely. Now, another big reason learning English feels hard is fear of mistakes. Many learners are so afraid of being judged or laughed at that they stay quiet.
Yes, that fear is powerful. I've met learners who know a lot of grammar, who can write essays, but they freeze up in real conversations because they are scared of making a mistake.
And the irony is, mistakes are not just normal, they are essential. You can't improve without them. Children learning their first language make mistakes every single day, but they don't stop speaking because of that. Adults, however, feel embarrassed.
Right, but if you think about it, nobody remembers your small grammar mistakes. People remember your ideas, your personality, your message. That's what counts.
Exactly. And once you give yourself permission to be imperfect, English becomes much easier. Suddenly, it's not about avoiding mistakes, it's about learning from them.
Which connects to the next reason: motivation goes up and down.
Oh yes. Motivation is never stable. Sometimes you're excited, watching English videos every day. Then 1 week later, you feel tired, bored, and unmotivated. Learners often think, maybe I'm not serious enough. But that's not true, it's just human.
Yes, even professional athletes or musicians don't feel motivated every day. They succeed because of consistency, not constant excitement. That's why routine is so important. If you rely only on motivation, English will always feel like a roller coaster.
That's a good point. If you make English part of your lifestyle, listening while cooking, speaking with friends, watching shows you enjoy, it becomes easier, because you don't have to force yourself every time.
And that leads to the idea of enjoyment. English feels hard when it's only about textbooks, exams, or pressure. But when you connect it to things you love, like music, films, games, or travel, it suddenly feels lighter.
Yes, learning through things you actually enjoy makes such a huge difference. Because then English stops being just a subject, and it becomes a part of your life.
Another reason English feels so hard is that people expect instant results. They study for a few weeks and think, why am I not fluent yet? But language doesn't work like that. It's more like growing a plant: you water it every day, you give it sunlight, and slowly, it grows.
Yes, and I think people often forget the invisible progress. For example, when you watch a movie in English and you understand just a few more words than last time, that's progress. When you can follow a YouTube video without subtitles for a little longer, that's progress too.
Exactly. But many learners compare themselves to native speakers and feel frustrated. They think, why can't I sound like that, instead of realizing that even small improvements are huge steps forward.
That's so true. Another reason English feels hard is that people try to study in ways that don't match their lifestyle. Like, if you're busy, you don't need to force yourself to study grammar books for hours. You can learn by listening to podcasts while walking, or practicing speaking while cooking.
Yes, learning should fit into your life, not fight against it. When you make English part of your everyday routine, it feels natural instead of stressful.
And we should also mention perfectionism. Many learners are afraid to speak because they worry about mistakes. But mistakes are proof that you're learning. If you never make mistakes, you're not trying.
Right. Imagine a child learning their first language. They make mistakes all the time, but that's how they grow. English learners need to give themselves permission to make mistakes too.
So maybe the real reason English feels hard is not the language itself, but the way we think about it. If we shift our mindset, focus on small wins, accept mistakes, and learn in ways that match our life, it becomes much easier.
Couldn't agree more. And the moment you stop thinking, English is hard, and start thinking, English is my tool, and I'm improving every day, everything changes.
And let's not forget motivation. Sometimes English feels hard because learners forget why they started. If your only reason is, I need to pass an exam, it might feel heavy. But if you connect English to something you love, like music, movies, or even making friends around the world, it feels lighter and more enjoyable.
Yes, learning becomes easier when it's tied to joy. For example, if you love football, read football news in English, watch interviews, or join discussions online. Suddenly, English isn't just a subject, it's a gateway to the things you already enjoy.
That's a powerful shift. And it also helps you stay consistent. Because when learning is fun, you don't quit. You naturally keep going, and little by little, English feels less like a mountain and more like a path you enjoy walking.
Another point is patience. Many learners underestimate how much time it takes to get comfortable in English. They think if they don't sound fluent after a few months, something's wrong. But actually, it's completely normal for progress to be slow at first.
Yes, and the brain is always working in the background. Even when you feel stuck, your brain is processing the new words, the sounds, the patterns. Then one day, suddenly, you understand a sentence you couldn't before. That's proof that learning is happening.
I love that moment. It's like magic, when something that used to confuse you suddenly makes sense. And it only happens if you keep going, even when English feels difficult.
So really, hard doesn't mean impossible. It just means it takes time, patience, and the right approach.
And sometimes, English feels hard because learners compare themselves to others. They see someone speaking fluently and think, why am I not like that yet? But what they don't see is the years that person already spent practicing.
Exactly. Comparison steals your confidence. Instead of comparing yourself to others, compare yourself to your past self. Ask, am I better than I was last week? Last month? Last year? That's the real measure of progress.
And actually, even small improvements count. Maybe today you used one new word correctly, or you understood one extra sentence in a podcast. That's progress.
Right? And if you celebrate those small wins, English starts to feel easier. It shifts from being stressful to being encouraging.
Another reason it feels hard is perfectionism. Some learners are afraid to speak because they don't want to make mistakes. But the truth is, mistakes are part of the process. No one improves without them.
Yes, in fact, mistakes are evidence that you're learning. If you're not making mistakes, it means you're not challenging yourself. The only way to grow is to step out of your comfort zone.
And when you accept mistakes as normal, suddenly speaking becomes less scary. You stop worrying about every little detail and start focusing on communication.
Which is the whole point of English, to connect, to share ideas, to understand and be understood. Once you shift your focus to that, English feels lighter, less heavy, and much more natural.
One very practical tip is to break English into small daily habits. Instead of trying to do a huge study session once a week, do a little bit every day. Even just 10 or 15 minutes of listening, reading, or speaking can make a big difference over time.
Yes, it's like exercising. If you go to the gym once a month for 3 hours, you won't see results. But if you exercise 20 minutes every day, you'll get stronger. Language learning works the same way.
Another thing is mixing fun with study. A lot of learners feel English is hard because they only connect it with textbooks, grammar drills, or exams. But if you also watch movies, listen to songs, or play games in English, it feels less like work and more like a hobby.
I totally agree. Enjoyment is fuel. If you enjoy the process, you'll keep going. And when you keep going, improvement is guaranteed.
Something else that helps is using English in real life as soon as possible. Don't wait until you feel ready. Try speaking to friends, writing messages, or even talking to yourself in English. Practice creates readiness, not the other way around.
Yes, and remember, fluency doesn't come from memorizing, it comes from using. If you use English daily, even in small ways, your brain adapts and the language starts to feel natural.
Plateaus are something every learner faces. At the beginning, progress feels fast. You learn new words every day, and you can suddenly say things you couldn't before. But later, improvement feels slower, and that's when many people think, maybe I'm not improving anymore.
Exactly. But the truth is, you are improving, just in smaller, less visible ways. Think of it like climbing a mountain. Sometimes you walk a steep path and feel the change, sometimes it's flat, but you're still moving forward.
That's such a good image. And when you feel stuck, it's actually a sign that you've reached a new stage. You already know the basics, so now progress is about refining skills, like better pronunciation, deeper vocabulary, or faster listening.
Yes, and one way to overcome that plateau is to change your routine. If you always study with apps, maybe try a podcast. If you always read, try speaking with someone. Shaking up your routine can wake your brain up again.
Another trick is setting new, clear goals. Instead of just, I want to improve my English, you can say, I want to understand one English movie without subtitles, or I want to have a 10-minute conversation without switching to my native language. Goals like that make progress measurable and motivating.
And don't forget to celebrate small wins. If last month you couldn't order food in English, but this month you can, that's real progress. Too many learners only focus on what they can't do, but noticing what you can do now is key to staying motivated.
Let's talk about emotions, because honestly, they play a huge role. Many learners don't quit English because it's impossible, they quit because they feel embarrassed, shy, or afraid of making mistakes.
That's so true. The fear of judgment is probably the biggest hidden reason why learning English feels hard. When you're scared of being laughed at or corrected, you stay quiet. And when you stay quiet, you lose practice time.
Right. But here's something important, mistakes are not proof that you're bad at English. Mistakes are actually proof that you're using English. If you're silent, there's nothing to improve. If you speak and make errors, your brain has material to work with.
I love that perspective. And I think learners need to see English not as an exam, but as a tool. A tool for connection. When you shift your focus from I must speak perfectly to I want to connect with this person, the pressure drops and fluency comes more naturally.
Yes, and connection creates confidence. For example, if you successfully share a story with a friend, even with mistakes, you feel proud. That emotional success pushes you to keep going.
Also, don't underestimate the role of self-kindness. If you beat yourself up every time you forget a word, you'll only add stress. But if you say, okay, I forgot today, but I'll remember next time, you keep learning in a healthy way.
Exactly. Learning a language is as much about managing your emotions as it is about memorizing grammar. If you can control the fear and stay kind to yourself, English starts to feel lighter.
So let's move into something really practical, making English part of your everyday life. If English only exists in your textbook, or once a week in class, of course it feels heavy. But if it becomes part of your routine, even in small ways, it starts to feel natural.
Yeah, think about it like brushing your teeth. You don't even question it, you just do it. What if English became that kind of habit? For example, instead of scrolling social media in your native language, switch your feed to English. Watch short videos, read captions, leave simple comments. That's already practice.
And for listening, you can turn your background time into learning time. Play podcasts, songs, or even news in English while you cook, clean, or commute. You don't need to understand every word. The goal is to let your ears get used to the rhythm.
Another easy trick is to label things around your house. Write mirror on your mirror, door on your door. Every time you see it, your brain makes a connection. Over time, these little reminders add up.
Also, practice thinking in English. When you walk outside and see the weather, instead of saying in your head, Harry any panas, say, it's hot today. If you make this a habit, you'll stop translating and start living in English.
And don't forget technology. AI chat apps, voice recorders, or even language exchange apps can give you space to practice without judgment. Just 5 minutes of speaking out loud every day is better than one big study session once a week.
Exactly. It's about frequency, not intensity. Little, consistent moments of English every day will take you much further than rare, heavy study sessions.
Right, because boredom is actually one of the biggest reasons people stop learning English. If it feels like a chore, you'll avoid it. But if you make it enjoyable, you'll look forward to it.
One simple way is to connect English with things you already love. If you like music, dive into English songs, look up the lyrics, sing along, even write down new phrases you hear. If you enjoy gaming, play games in English or with English-speaking players.
Same with TV shows and movies. Don't treat them like study material, treat them like entertainment. Watch something you genuinely like, even if it's a silly sitcom. You'll still pick up natural expressions and humor.
And you don't need to force yourself to always study while watching. Sometimes just enjoy it. The language will soak in. Then, on another day, you can re-watch with subtitles or pause to note new words.
Another idea is variety. If you only use one book or one method, your brain gets tired. Mix it up, sometimes reading, sometimes listening, sometimes speaking with a friend. The more you change the activity, the fresher it feels.
Also, reward yourself. If you finish a 20-minute English practice session, give yourself a small treat. This trains your brain to associate learning with something positive.
And remember, boredom often comes from pressure. If you're always worried about being perfect, it drains the fun. But if you treat English like a playground where mistakes are allowed, suddenly it feels lighter.
That's true. Mistakes aren't failures, they are signs you're learning. Once you see them that way, even practice feels more exciting.
Exactly. And honestly, if you can remove that pressure and add a bit of fun, English stops feeling like a subject in school and starts feeling like part of your life.
That's the whole point. Your journey doesn't need to be boring, it doesn't need to be heavy, it can be creative, playful, and even exciting. Every little moment of practice, whether it's singing a song, watching a show, or just chatting with someone, is progress.
So don't worry if you're not perfect. Just keep going, keep exploring, and keep finding ways to enjoy it.
Because if you enjoy the process, you'll naturally stay consistent. And when you stay consistent, improvement is guaranteed.
Thanks for listening to today's episode.
And we'll see you in the next one.